In today's episode of Bible Bits, we're going to learn about drawing the eyes of the lost. Hi, welcome to another Bible Bits. Today we're going to talk about something that is very important, but before we do, welcome children of God and those who try to stray away from Him. Just remember that God is waiting for you to come back with wide open arms. And today we have once more, we are blessed with the presence of Melissa. Nice to hear from you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lucas. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
Oh,
I forgot to say hello. How how are things going for you? Like in your creative life recently?
oh gosh, I've been really well. I've been doing pretty good. I've been working on adding like interactive feature to my game engine to, more precisely, games like Myst or places like that where you can click on and a certain like on a door or something and it kind of faces that to that room. It's
Hmm,
using a lot of mystery or like adventure games.
right,
I've been developing one of those, and I've been able to juggle that and life and studying music pretty well. That's going well, and also, um, I've well, it might be an issue, a discussion for another video, but I think I got some personal revelation on on how to cope with if you're someone who has I've been someone who's ever having to I've been someone who's been having to deal with chronic procrastination. It's like how to get through that, and I've been getting some really good personal victory in that and revelation.
that's great.
That's been very encouraging.
Well, I don't think creative people have problems with procrastination, right, guys? Just everyone that I know that is creative. I guess that's something that is very much worth exploring in a maybe next maybe another soon episode. I would definitely be into it. If for some reason anyone is hearing this and you feel like it's a good idea, drop in the comments or drop a suggestion, something that you're going through, a like Melissa's saying, a breakthrough in your creative life or whatever. If you want to share with us, sure, it's a good thing. Um, if you have a demand for a Discord that you would like to be around creative people, um, we actually have something that might interest you. So if there's anything that you want, and you want to reach out, we are here for that. 100%, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh,
And we're
Melissa
looking
has
forward
a
to
sorry,
as I were looking forward to building up and just seeing what you create. You know,
100%.
this yep.
Um,
Uh,
Melissa has a Discord called Culture Climb, and she has been working with it for the glory of God for several times. I'm one of the people that benefits from being around there and gathering around with them. We pray, we do prayer requests, we gather around sometimes, and there were even some playing sections, right?
yeah. Oh gosh, I'm really happy with Culture Climb. It's just it's just being a place where people can get together and give each other resources for inspiration. I've had chats for like maybe I was maybe starting if you need someone to help you with if someone's been dealing with with discouragement or procrastination, that kind of thing. Having a support group could be handy. Someone you can talk to once in a while, just see how things are going. Um, Sharing knowledge, showing your works in progress to other people. And praying with each other. It's just nice to have that sense that community. the friends you make and everything. It really makes the burdens lighter, and everything feels more hopeful, more real, more tangible. I'm really glad I started it.
Yeah, and if you don't want to join something specific like this, no worry. But I definitely recommend you find a place where you have Christian people to give you support, because creative like drive is something that is very good to have, and you can find all sorts of inspiration in the world from all sorts of people. They don't need to be Christian or whatever, but having someone that is from the same faith of yours, when you feel like you need someone to like raise you up and help you, um, it's very good. It's a very different experience to have someone of the same faith kind of like rooting for you and offering support. I can talk from experience.
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
by the way,
Yes,
sorry.
I was just agreeing with you. It's like, yeah, having someone to connect to, it's just like working by yourself. It's, I mean, everyone needs to have it's good to have your discipline and be able to be motivated by yourself, but having others in your life, people you don't want to let down, or people, people that you have friends and things like that. It makes the whole experience, it makes the experience lighter, and having people you love in your life, your like brothers and just friends and just people you look up to. It's a good experience, and it's a beautiful thing. And if it's not with us, I pray you, dear watcher, that you find it for yourself. It's very good for you, I think.
It is. And the reason why although we offer what we already have and where we're at, we don't want you to feel constrained, is because the reign of God is not concentrating on one or another initiative. Um, I came to Culture Climb. There, Alyssa and her sister actually gave me a perspective that made me consider starting Bible Bits. So it's something that is a little bit out, but it's still derivative of Culture Climb in a way. So all sorts of inspiration bring glory to God, and the paths of the Word of God just naturally multiplies. That's something that's really good. Maybe we should post the link in the comments, maybe after. Anyways, um, but I we wanted to start talking because we are making different episodes, and they all have their own subjects, but we're trying to kind of stitch together the themes. The first one was receiving the order of God to go, to do, to act, and the other one was about where to go. And now we are here to talk about
Yes.
something that is kind of important. We gather together to discuss what we are going to talk about, and we laid down some subjects, some perspectives, and Melissa felt like it was useful that we talked about making games as Christians to non-Christians. When we are making games, or when we are producing like an art piece, an animation, or whatever, we are not only making for Christians, we are making for everyone. And sometimes that kind of product can bring divisions in our heart with our expectations, how we think some things will go, and sometimes they don't go that way. And hopefully we can like talk a little about this, and maybe put to rest some of the questions that some creative people have in their hearts when they don't feel like their success is achieved the way they want to, when they dedicate to the glory of God. And well, hopefully we could all learn something here. Um, so let's should we go to the Bible?
Let's shall.
Okay. So I wanted to talk first about how sometimes we invite God to our lives and to our creative, uh, well, creations. And sometimes we feel like if we do things um, in a glorious, thoughtful way to God, our products will be multiplied. Maybe our games will sell well or whatever. And when sometimes we create something and it doesn't sell properly, sometimes we feel like we got a little bit left out, or we question if God really blessed this project. And some things that go to my mind is, even if you do things for God, right? Sometimes it's not like putting Bible verses in a game, or making a game about Jesus saving everyone. Making games in order to achieve financial success are something that not necessarily are just a matter of heart. And sometimes we can see in the Bible times where men, spiritually inspired men, have used some, you know, some pretext, some different applications to talk about the Bible, but not necessarily talk the Bible in a direct way, by using other tools and references. And that's why I wanted to talk first about the parable that Nathan. I don't know if it's a proper parable, but let's call it a tale. Um,
Yeah.
uh, a tale from Nathan to David, right? It is in 2 Samuel, verses 1 to through 7. Could you read this for us,
All right.
please?
Absolutely, Lucas.
Thank you.
2 Samuel 12, 1 through 7. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him, and said unto him, There were two men in one city, the one rich, and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up, and it grew together with him, and with his children. It did eat of his own meat, and drink of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, As the Lord liveth, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die, and he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And
Yeah, that's to 7.
yeah,
Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
that's the seven.
So, what do you think when we read this regarding the current topic that we're discussing?
Okay, well, when I read this, what came to mind was that Nathan had used okay, he did he had used the story of presenting it David a scenario that he was completely neutral toward.
Mhm.
He wouldn't have any biases or prejudices and be able to see the events of this tale with neutral eyes.
Right.
Had he just, had he just had spoken to them the truth plainly, straight up front, he would have given excuses or appealed to his own authority. But when he used the story, and Nathan and David himself condemned the man for what he did, and then revealed to Nathan and when Nathan revealed to David that the story was actually about him, he got David to see that he did in fact that he did condemn his own actions.
Right.
right. So he got to see that by using the story of this parallel story, he was able to basically make David see what he was own doing plainly and in truth.
Right.
He couldn't lie to himself. And so David was given a chance to see the error of his ways. It was it was very clever. And I think that one of the great powers of the parable is it's easier for a person to look at a subject objectively, to not automatically to apply prejudices or biases to a story. And so, but when that happens, like giving a chance with later on, other your life can actually help you kind of apply what was said to the story
Mm-hmm.
to and apply it and help explain that to someone else, like Lord of the Rings. Um, I mean, as the elements in that story have been used to as allegories for the idea of greed and corruption and so many things, and very effectively by lovers of the story. Is like the characters in the story provide sort of an emotionally safe place for two people to discuss the effects of different actions and different philosophies.
Right.
Um, yes, so I'm like, there's a lot of power in these kind of tales, even though like in the story of the Lord of the Rings, it didn't take it was in a place where, you couldn't tell that I mean the god of that of Lord of the Rings and things like it wasn't, directly their stories. It's like this was like it's supposed to be the idea. It was like a very ancient culture that before the Christianity was established,
Mm-hmm.
if symbolically in the story. Um, so you could kind of well, I'm kind of repeating myself. The
No,
idea
I
is you
I
could
actually
see.
agree with you, and one thing that one can argue against your perspective is, yeah, but the Lord of the Rings is something that is being made for, general public, and that including Christians and non-Christians. David was definitely a Christian, but he wasn't acting like a Christian at the moment. So your point is very precise and accurate. Unfortunately, David couldn't be treated here as a proper Christian that lived like spiritually guided by God. He was completely lost. So yeah, I can definitely see
Yeah,
your reference like a book like Lord of the Rings.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. So
Uh,
that's the oh, go ahead.
sorry. Uh, that's definitely the kind of thing that I never reevaluated, that Lord of the Rings has a ancient religion, right? That is not supposed to be
Mhm,
parallel to what we Christians know. Of course, there are no elves or whatever, but definitely there
right.
is a sense that what is sacred is trying to be like detached from the reverence and the sobriety, and the people who are trying to destroy everything under the control of a malevolent power is out there and trying to win over everyone. Yeah, that's a very good point. So
Yeah.
we something that I wanted to talk about as well is the reference in Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8, when we talk about the miracle of the multiplication of bread. um
Right.
that's a reference that people might question, what does it have to do with creation, what does it have to do with using different techniques to reach out to people. And I don't know, it might not make the bridge very well, But in my mind, I got thinking, and Jesus already said what he had to talk to that those people, that population. And the miracle of the bread was something that it's first a prophecy, you know, that Jesus becomes the bread that fills everyone. Also to show the power of Jesus. But the bread is something that is a point that is not the message itself, but it needed to be done because Jesus was somebody who preached about the love of God, the compassion of God, and bringing people to talk about something regarding compassion. But when people are hungry and kind of lost, you don't show that compassion. It kind of breaks the message, right? So we had the parable, the tale of Nathan to David, and now Jesus is not only talking about compassion and the love of God and how God is enough for everyone, but in a moment of need, he is using his power to show people that he's not limited to our perceptions, to the physicality of our limitations because he's spiritual, right? That
Right.
does it make sense? That correlation that I did, or it's just a little
Hmm.
out.
May I read the passage?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Okay. I'm thinking, yeah, I feel like I think I'm picking up something, but I just want to read it and just kind of sort of I think I feel something. Um,
it's one through verse 1 through 8, please.
right. In those days, the crowd once again became very large, and they had nothing to eat. Jesus called the disciples to him and said, I have compassion for this crowd, because they have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will faint along the way, for some of them have come a great distance. His disciples replied, Where in this desolate place could anyone find enough bread to feed all these people? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied. And he instructed the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves, gave thanks, and broke them, and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And they distributed them to the crowd. They also had a few small fish, and Jesus blessed them and ordered that these be set before them as well. The people ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over, and about 4,000 men were present. I apologize, I got wrapped up in the story.
Not a problem.
But there were 4,000 there that was part of the wonder.
Right.
But I think I see the correlation. When Jesus when Jesus was here, the people had come to spend time with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he was there, and he wanted to be sure that they were fed and strengthened before they went back to their lives. I think when and this reminded me of, like, a revelation I had, like, yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
when I was kind of sort of underst I remember this I started building up, when I get in presence of God, I get really excited about the things I do and the impact I can have on the life of others. And I remember thinking, like, with game development, it was like our hard work is going to be someone else's self-care. That when we produce art, people take time from their days, from their lives, and they put away everything else and they sit with the work with they kind of it's like they sit with us. And we want to be sure that they get something that benefits, that makes them happy. I mean, a good message is one thing, but I think with games, it's like fun is very important. We want to
Entertain.
yeah, it's the same thing. So when we go in there, it's like we're not I mean, we want to, it's good to want to share the truth that comforted us, but we also want to say, Lord, please show us, like, what can we give these people that will lift their spirits? I mean, sometimes, gosh, and I mean, when people play games, they want to be excited, they want to be challenged, or sometimes they want to relax. It depends on, what what the nature of the game is.
Right.
Like, what, I was thinking about, like, Scott Cawthon's game, Five Nights at Freddy's. They want to be scared, and a lot of people, they do get a thrill out of getting scared, so, you wanna be scary and exciting, but it's neat. It's like but even but the depth of of Scott Cawthon's stories and stuff were kind of they're placed there, and it was for those who just liked gleaming information and noticing patterns, and, uh, they got the excitement of finding mysteries. It's like, in that there's a passage, I think it's somewhere in Proverbs that says, it is, um, the glory of God to, uh to bring, to kind of bury mysteries, okay, I'm going to be paraphrasing,
Right.
to hide mysteries in the earth, and it's the glory of kings draw it out. Um, s s I think some of the fun in this in the story of the 4,000, he took care of he fed them spiritually, but he also took care of a natural need. He gave them food. I'm like, is it good for a game to have a spiritual message for those who are seeking it? But for those who come, it's good for all of them to have, like, just something kind of a natural need, um, a
Sorry
good
to interrupt you.
distraction.
Um, is it Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2?
Let's see, Proverbs 25, verse 2. Oh, yes, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, to search out a matter is the glory of kings. Let's see, the King James is, it is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like a lot of that, I mean, doesn't that just kind of describe, like, paleontology, archaeology, chemistry? It's like so many people have devoted their lives to digging into the nature of creation and
Mhm.
understanding it. And God planted it all there, and He's just like watching us figure out and grow. And He's like, look at that. And I think, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the beautiful thing about the Bible is sometimes we can just kind of take back and sort of you can see the truth about human nature, and not just fallen man, but just man in general. It's like people they like figuring things out. They like being challenged, and if you're clever, if you can make them laugh, they love that too. It's like
Yeah.
be fun, kind of be a good distraction, tell a lighthearted story, crack a joke, uh, present them with a titillating mystery that'll help them, kind of put the world out of their mind for a while and solve a problem and save the day. It's or it's even just like building reflexes or things like that, like even just like Tetris or Match Three games. It was just sorting and just building and gathering,
Yeah.
just just people taking their minds off of the cares of the world and
Not
making it something.
just
It's just something
not just bring them to your game, but actually bring them and feed them, right?
right. It's like be sure, like be determined to be a source of of rest
Mm.
in your games. Like tell the truth, absolutely, but you also like have fun.
Right.
Think, remember the presence of God, and remember fun.
Indeed.
It's sort of, gosh, and another thing that kind of surprised me about Five Nights at Freddy's. was, for one thing, he'd been making games for years, and he's become very his experience from past games made him better at making games. They fine-tuned his skills, so each game he made, he would produce a better engine and process things better. And so, I mean, even if your games didn't sell, each one, each one you'll make new friends. You make even you find at least a couple of people who enjoyed your game or appreciate what you're doing, and they often become your friends. That's what happened with me and Amy and Artisan. It was that was the time it led us to friends. That was the most priceless thing we got from that. And we developed, and of course, you develop your writing skills, you develop your creative skills, and you make one more fan and friends, and those are priceless. You want a good circle of friends before you really take off. It feels like it's all meant to move this way. You know, small group friends, and then gradually from that you go on and you're ready to start serving serving the people at large. I mean, Jesus kind of started off with small groups too, and he got his disciples, and then once he had the disciples, that's when he just really started shooting, just taking off. So it's like it's good not to be discouraged if your first games don't, take off, but
Right.
keep doing it. Um, and to my point
To also the point that you're
was
make to also the point that you're making, um, building skills is something really important. Some people try to, instead of working towards an objective, they try to make their path into something, their creation, a miracle by itself, and it can work that way, but it's not always like this, right? So
no.
studying and capacitating yourself, sharpen your skills, it's something that is really important, even if you work for the glory of God.
Yes. And one other thing that impressed me. Now, I don't always, sometimes, what works for one person won't necessarily work for someone else. But one thing that impressed me about Scott Cawthon's his game Finance at Freddy's, he was from a very that he came from a very low point in his career at that point. His last game had been panned horribly, and he was working his whole life trying to make games, and he was starting to get a little recognition. Then he was mocked again, and the pain from that and the insults were actually he took that and it turned it into a story of it was like a story. He was doing a little story about a little cartoon beavers riding a place. And he said, and someone said they looked like scary, like creepy animatronic. They looked like scary teddy bears. And uh, Scott Conn said, "No, I can do scary teddy bears," and that was that experience. That was the inspiration for Five Nights at Freddy's. And I was like, that took some courage. I mean, that was like real personal pain, borderline despair. He was getting ready to give up making games altogether, but he couldn't help himself. He had to do one more, and that comment, it sparked something in him, and he didn't run from he didn't run from the criticism, from the insults. He took all that and turned it into something, and that was the game that changed everything for him. And it's like it's become one of the first new IPs to come out in America or the world in years. Um, everyone else and most people are just recycling the same handful of characters, but he created something new that was embraced by the mainstream. That doesn't happen an awful lot, and it was impressive. And I really appreciated his courage. And like, you really do have to stick your neck out, and sometimes it is going to hurt,
Right.
like a lot. But don't be afraid of that, and sometimes when you think you're at your lowest, you can gather some very useful materials when you're at your lowest, and it can be used to lift you up. It's a fascinating life that he's led.
Right, indeed. I wanted actually to bring a passage is in First Samuel chapter 16, verses for 17th to 23. Could you help me
Okay,
read this?
absolutely.
Thank you.
17 through 23. And Saul said unto his servants, Provide me now a man that can play well, and bring him to me. Then answered one of his servants and said, Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, that is cunning in playing, and a mighty valiant man, and a man of war, and prudent in matters, and a comely person, and the Lord is with him. Wherefore Saul sent messengers unto Jesse, and said, Send me David thy son, which is with the sheep. And Jesse took an ass laden with bread, and a bottle of wine, and a kid, and sent them by David his son unto Saul. And David came to Saul, and stood before him, and he loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, Let David, I pray thee, stand before me, for he hath found favor in my sight. And it came to pass, when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took an harp and played with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the evil spirit departed from him.
So, one thing from this, by the way, thank you. uh, one thing from this passage that I find really interesting is that David was preparing himself to be, a man of courage. He's like somebody who is fearless. The kind of man that prepares himself to battle, and he's noticed by the king, but as a harp player. And
Yeah,
sometimes we want to be called for battle or for whatever we are good at. For example, for Melissa, she's a programmer and a music composer. I'm also a music composer, but I'm more into the artistic art direction side of things, 3D. And sometimes we prepare ourselves to what we think we're going to be called for, and sometimes God has a different plan for us, but he still wants us to be prepared to assume those positions. David was a person of war, but in order to come to war, he started to be recognized as a harp player, which is something that is kind of like the other way. But he did this with passion. And one thing that I was discussing together with Melissa is she pointed out how important him playing the harp was, because it had a spiritual impact to the point where the evil spirit over soul uh, was kind of like diminished by the harp play, right? And I find that very interesting. The kind of correlation that you made, I didn't connect those dots at the moment.
yeah. Um, it's true. I mean, that isn't. It's like God can cause. God can take something simple and anoint it and give it power.
Right.
But when the most the Moses took his staff, but and God blessed it, and great things were done. Um, but I also feel like skill is skill is the fruit of persistence, patience, and long suffering. It's the fruit of the spirit. I'm starting to play the guitar. I'm not super good now, but if I persist, I can become, I can, in maybe another year or so time, can play songs that would say entertain friends.
Right.
Maybe longer still, if I persist, God blesses me, maybe in 10 years, I could even be able to play uh, to a crowd and entertain them and, lighten spirits that way.
Hmm.
Um, so I think, and a lot of times when we're developing our games, it's a lot of it is, finding your voice. It's developing your skills. Each time you make a game, it's going to be your skills will grow. You know, some people might not may like an older game better than a newer game, but each one does bring strength to you,
Mm-hmm.
and at least a few a few new players, and cherish like God bless every single one of people. Those wonderful human beings that download your game. If you only have like 6 or 7 players, turn that into your prayer list.
Mm-hmm.
Minister in any which way you can. I mean, at some point, like if you end up having like 10 or 20 million players, it's like congratulations. Maybe a prayer list at that point be a little yeah, might be a little overwhelming, but you're like ministering whatever you can with whatever group you have, and every phase. Like there's a proverb that says, gosh, is it dread not the time of small beginnings?
Mm-hmm.
Um, being small is is nothing to be ashamed of.
True.
It's like whatever you do, don't give into a spirit of shame. Don't compare yourself to others. Be focused on God and the journey itself. See what your art becomes, and see what went wrong and enjoy the things that went right. And being that, it's like there's well, maybe
To
I
support,
feel like yep,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I feel like I keep on thinking about what I learned, this thing I was studying about but it's more about, procrastination. This is about, want to keep, focused on the subject of um, drawing the eyes of the blind. It's how to create art that people who don't have your relationship with Christ will find use in.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much wisdom and so much to talk about and be excited about when you're trying to build things for the Lord. So it's easy to kind of get sidetracked. Um,
And persistence is something that, when you're talking about the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, when you're talking about your personal journey, I feel like persistency and understanding that everything that you want to achieve has kind of steps to it. Remind me of
yeah,
Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, that says, "And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." Not that it's strictly related to doing good, but being persistent in the things that you truly believe that make the difference. And one day you're going to, get what you're aiming for, right?
right.
So,
And you will hit it. And like each time it's like developing the skill, the quality of your work. It will all that's something else, quality. It will attract, people who aren't necessarily it'll attract people, Christian and non-Christian alike. Um, and it'll help you develop like you'll know what how the game you develop like gameplay styles, art style. Um, I think like where Scott Cawthon really shined in Five Nights at Freddy's was just the environment and how he really like in the original Five Nights at Freddy's he really balanced kind of humor and comedy and balanced them really well. So like through the dialogue, he told a it was kind of like a short film of a game,
mhm.
but really, really smartly done. And you'll be able each game you make, you'll be better at telling a story or fine tuning your engine, engine, your controls, um,
Your skills.
innovation in game and things and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I also want to make something different. I mean, make a different argument. Not different from you, but from
right.
what we have been presenting over here. That's what we have been trying to establish is that when you make something to God, You still have to persist. You still have to, grow as an artist, as a creator, um, and understand that sometimes what you're preparing for is not what you're going to be called for, and
Mhm.
that your perception of being blessed is not exactly what you perceive as blessing, but also what God has prepared for you. And
Yeah.
I want to bring two small verses here. They are in Exodus. One is in Exodus chapter 28. Um, and I'll show soon after that why I'm talking about it. Um, the 28 is in the verse 36 here. And it says, "And thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and engrave upon it like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord." So we see here that some things that God demanded were made out of pure gold. And you might think that God is humble, that God is perfect, he doesn't need those kind of things. But sometimes he will order you to, achieve greatness to represent him. And other times, God will present himself in a way of, uh, simplicity and humbleness. And we can go to Exodus chapter 20, um, verse 24. And we will see here that an altar of earth thou shalt make unto me, and shalt sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings, and thy peace offerings, thy sheep, and thy oxen. In all places where I record my name, I will come into thee, and I will bless thee. Right? So at first, he talks about a plate made of gold, but up here, he condemns deities and making gods out of gold or silver, and he shows how simple he is, how simple it is to reach God. A simple altar of earth is made, and it glorifies him. So don't be confused if sometimes God invites you to a more simple perspective, and sometimes he will invite you to something that demands a little bit more. We don't decide what the mission is. We don't decide how things will work out. We are here for the glory of God, right? So it's important that we maintain this perspective that in order to serve God and do things for his glory, we need actually to have the attention to understand where he wants our hearts to be, in a simple plan, in an altar of earth, or in a plate of gold. It varies, and it's a very personal relationship. At least that's what I get reading several different Bible passages. Some are very simple, some are very complex. Sometimes God shows his might through a very glorious way. Sometimes it's a very simple way, right? And I bet you
Right.
felt like you were called sometimes for some things that were bigger and sometimes simpler, right?
Mhm. Oh, sure. God, I mean, we're called to work with our hands, live in peace with our neighbor,
Mhm.
love him, and love our neighbor as ourselves. Um, that involves doing great. It could be involve creating beautiful, creative works. Simply like maybe cleaning a neighbor's yard. You know, love to God and to God, and love for our brothers and sisters in Christ is the foremost thing.
Mhm.
It's the principal thing.
Great.
Um, eh, making having a game studio. Well, I'm talking about like size of like, and of course, when you think getting a having a large following,
Right.
um, yeah, that's something that God might call you to, or it may, well, it's not to call you to. Your work may produce that fruit, maybe persist.
Hmm.
Um, God might call you elsewhere, but
You need to be able to answer for the calling, whatever it is, right?
right,
If you pose yourself
uh,
as his servant.
it's true. I mean, altar sacrifice.
That's something that we not always we want to make great things for God, right?
Mhm.
And
But I'm
sometimes we want
thinking
to.
about it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just like, and it might be some of that could be maybe whatever serves or reaches people more.
Hmm.
It's like maybe you want to create like an epic War Pig, but what if what the people want more are simpler games? It's like, or like hidden object games, or it was like so often it's like, you're uh Scott Cawthon loved, loved science fiction and RPGs. Like those are the science fiction RPGs and things like that were the games he's passionate about.
Hmm.
But it wasn't it wasn't the game that took off. It was basically a time management game. The mechanics are actually very simple, but they they were fun. And
Right.
I kind of feel like a lot of people who make art, it's like try different things. Sometimes you get a desire to create like a magnum opus of some kind.
Mhm.
Um, like a really mechanically complex like fight like a 2D or like a traditional fighting game like Street Fighter, just that kind of brought to the nth degree, or games like, oh gosh, I don't want to go too far back in time. Um,
No problem.
or games that's like the very complex, or like RPGs, things like that. And I'm like, maybe the game that takes off is going to be something that seems humble.
Hmm.
It isn't quite as it's not as grand and impressive. Or it's like if your indie game dev friends would kind of see what you're doing and go like, oh, okay, it might seem like, cash grabs or whatever, but maybe the perfect game that you have an idea for is just a time management game, a match game, just something that is kind of small, simple, fun, and relaxing. It's like, don't be afraid to give small games a chance, or um, things that aren't that complicated. Uh, you know, make noble games, make lowly games, and see what happens.
Yeah, to the point of what you're saying, I actually, when I got into university, my first job was in a company that made educational games. And I was so like
That's
sad because um, the games that were being made were for kids, like really young kids. And when you think about making games as a game developer, you think about complex games with a lot of story, interesting graphics. And I was making games to teach kids um, the color blue, the color yellow.
yeah.
And it
Mass
kind
Effect.
what?
This isn't Mass Effect.
Yeah, exactly. There's no like complex RPG stories that kind of brings a unique story to each player. And I started to feel a little bit like um, unsatisfied with it. But what you're saying is very true. If you consider things beneath you all the time, you will never grow. You need to take the chances that you have, and you be like, okay. My game is kind of silly, but I have my mission in the moment and I will do my best. And little by little, the game was, was getting some more complexity. And I won't lie, it is still an educational game. But when we had the experience to make a booth in a fair and see kids playing and solving what to me was a very kind of silly, um, complexity of the puzzles and stuff. But they were actually cracking their heads and trying to figure out and having fun. And that moment, I was very glad that I decided to dedicate and actually do something and not just think it's all beneath me. I dedicated myself to
Right.
it, and it was a really good moment to see the kids experiencing things. And that's when I realized that sometimes you're not going to be called for what you think you're going to, but you need to make the most of it and, persist. So what you said actually reminded me of that experience.
Aw, that is so cute. I like to see that game sometime. It sounds amazing.
Oh, it went through a turmoil of weird things, unfortunately, but the experience is actually something that I met a lot of nice people like there. And you know uh sometimes you will go into a project that you're not very much into, and it's fine
Right.
because you are still a developer. It's not because you're not 100% on board on the idea that it's not gonna work. You need to make it work. It's your job.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. I went back to the past. Uh, but so that actually kind of tangles itself into a point, and I I'll ask you if you could help me to read. It's a passage from First Chronicles, verse 17, verses for from 1 to 4.
First Chronicles 17, 1 through 4.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Oh, wait. I, Let me make sure I'm on King James so that it matches what's on the screen. Okay. Now it came to pass, as David sat in his house, that David said to Nathan the prophet, Lo, I dwell in an house of cedars, but the ark of the covenant of the Lord remaineth under curtains. Then Nathan said to David, Do all that is in thine heart, for God is with thee. And it came to pass the same night that the word of God came to Nathan, saying, Go and tell David my servant, Thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not build me an house to dwell in, for I have not dwelt in an house since the day that I brought up Israel unto this day, but have gone from tent to tent, and from one tabernacle to another. Wheresoever I have walked with all Israel, spake I a word to any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, Why have ye not built me an house of cedars? Now
um,
therefore thus huh?
Sorry, it was only to 4.
It's a four?
From
Oh,
1 to 4.
four. Okay.
uh,
Thou shalt not build me a house to dwell. Okay.
yeah. But it's actually interesting that by reading the others, you actually gave a little bit more context, and I think it's a provision that works with the point. Um, so David was a person that was thriving with whatever God trusted him with, and he wanted to do more. It was a something that came out of his heart. But this passage here says that and shows us that it's not because we feel in our heart that it's always to the will of God. Because some people will say, if it brings glory to God and if you feel it in your heart, you should do it. And that's exactly what Nathan did. But God have other had other plans. So sometimes we might be confronted in our lives with God not approving something that feels that it is to his glory, and it comes from our heart to serve him. And when we get this rejected, we might feel like God is rejecting us, and it's not true at all. It's just that
Not even slightly.
sorry?
I said not even slightly.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean God doesn't love us. It's just he has plans for us. And as much as sometimes we want to serve him from the things that come from our heart, we needed to be his servants and understand that he has his ways and they are always the best because he knows everything, right?
Right.
Yeah. So perhaps what the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's had in his heart was something that was pure and lovable, but he had to step a little out of his comfort zone to actually be in a place where he was actually being called for, you know. I don't know, it's a very personal experience between him and God, but since you brought his life and his works as an example, I feel like I would love to, and I know you would too. I would love to actually pick his brain about it and see how he perceived this kind of relationship into his creation and what he had in his heart with God. But it is actually interesting how confident Nathan was in saying that God is with David, and he was. But as much as he had good intent in his heart, David wasn't the one for the job. And sometimes it's important that
Right.
we need to understand that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. And if God says no, it's like, it's it's good that David wanted to do things for God. And so like, God says no to something, but I'm like, and it's just hang out with him. If it's like if two friends have ideas to one thing and the other person doesn't see eye to eye, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you don't that two friends don't love each other or don't build things together. It's just course correction and feeling each other's input and just figuring out where you're going. It's like that. It's very natural.
Right.
Um, so I feel like in this story, it's like it's like do all that is in your heart. It's like, and ultimately, when you create art, it's like it's good to try, you know, trying to figure out strategies for trying to make money. It's not really that's not really what art is for. But I'm saying you do what is in your heart. It's like I feel like this is kind of a good thing to mention. Like maybe you kind of want to make some maybe you have an idea for a hidden object game that you really like, but maybe you think that maybe it's like what if you're feeling like those kinds of games are cringe or whatever.
Hmm.
It's like give the if you want to do a little game, make a little game, and people who who don't want who don't know yet know Christ, they're they're souls that are they may not have yet a chance to learn what it is they're hungry for. It's
Hmm.
do they maybe have they reached a point in their lives where it's like the poor in spirit. That means someone who feels in their heart that they need something, that they need God, and that something's wrong. It's like that there's a want,
Right.
you know. And for those, it's like maybe they have to deal. Maybe they've had, maybe they've been exposed to bad teachings, and they don't know the true nature of God. But at least not rationally. But a heart that wants to be with God can kind of pick up on, my children know my lambs know my voice.
Hmm.
It's if your heart, it's going to, if it follows your own heart, and your heart is bonded with God, it's going to reflect that nature in your work. And those it won't have any positive impact on those who have totally sold themselves to Satan.
Hmm.
They'll hate you no matter what you say or do. But if someone has a little spark of hunger, there's gonna be a light in there, even if at first they're a bit maybe they're a bit maybe oh, if you put stuff in your maybe if they have problems with religion, it's like if you tell stories or games, stories in games, stories in your games that aren't expressly religious, but it's going to reflect the nature of God. It's going to show wisdom and, tell the truth about, good and evil. And for those who don't want to be deceived, it's going to be attractive to them and they're going to enjoy it. And I mean, and you'll be able to encourage them and be a light with your art,
Right.
even if it's like allegorical. Go ahead.
Right. Uh, and to a point of what you're saying, we talked here about the tale of Nathan to David. When we were discussing about this, what references should we put? Melissa showed me about the episode of VeggieTales called King George and the Ducky, right?
Right. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that, sorry,
it's a classic in the American Christian community.
that's very interesting because we're talking exactly how Nathan had to give like a different story to show how wrong David was, and King George and the Duck is actually another adaptation for that to kids, right? So we are seeing an
Yes.
adaptation of an adaptation just because there's a difference in the public, and but the message that is trying to be conveyed is the same. So that's a very important thing to take into consideration as creative people, because when we are talking about the glory of God, we might have some things, some preferences in our heart, and we might have our creative drive or what we consider is something important to be conveyed. But you know, sometimes the meanings, the way the media or whatever, it's we can't see at the moment, but needs to change in order to achieve the results that we actually need to find. Is that
Yeah.
what you're trying to say, to convey?
Oh, let's see if I understand that the maybe the atmosphere you're in is like right now it's not very open to just blatant discussions of Christian principles or uh, like certain concepts regarding God's morality or the nature of Christ. Is like you kind of have to be subdued about it. And even if the culture is, huh, culture, the culture itself might be a little hostile to it, but if you present it in a way that it kind of dodges, you know, prejudices and things like that, and just presents something in a slightly different perspective that might help people kind of see things in a different light.
Right.
Um, huh. I wonder
Hmm.
so, whether or not the world is by and large, oh, the world where that we have influence in
Hmm.
is accepting or distrusting of Christ or God. I feel like the culture's changing already and becoming more embracing of Christ, which is good.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm thinking like whether even if Christianity becomes mainstream,
Hmm.
oh gosh, mainstream, that's a funny word.
Yeah, for
Um,
Christianity, for sure.
yeah. I kind of feel like honestly the whole mainstream basically meant is it embraced by the handful of well the people in charge of the mountains of culture,
Right.
like the people on the and art, like the TV news stations, the publishing houses, the recording studios, all that. Um, and I feel like maybe that might be two different topics. Uh, the uh, the mainstream and the more indie underground world versus just a pure question is like, how do you create art that can appeal to someone who who wants to be entertained, but maybe isn't open to Christ yet?
Right.
How do you make art that ministers to them without becoming off-putting?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I guess like try to avoid like religious tropes or things that are like commonly said in church circles or understood in those circles, but maybe they weren't raised in a church, so it's alien to them. It's like
True.
what does a saved and unsaved man like have in common? Um, they they hunger, they thirst, they try to do things, they know success and failure. I mean,
So you use that, right? Because if you say something like, okay, you hunger for things because you hunger for the glory of God. Someone who's not a Christian, they won't understand what a hunger for God means. So you actually need
hmm,
to say, you know how you like, I don't know, Subway or McDonald's, and you feel like there's a craving that you need to satisfy. Yeah, your soul is like this. So you draw a parallel, not out of spirituality, but rather what is known to everyone in a basic level, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
to kind of tell stories that connect to the experience that the saved and the unsaved both have, and actually go and be don't be afraid to tell stories from people who do accept Christ and those who don't, and treat them both characters in a story like normal people. It's like don't make one avoid straw manning or things like that. Just like make them all seem reasonable and the characters can have honest conversations about God, about fellowship with Him. Um, tell those stories and share those kinds of experiences that a lot of the I mean, lots of people are not offended by Christ. Like, with offended, you could just maybe one day, oh, God will work through them that, but it's like, don't be afraid to tell that story that someone else won't like. I mean, no one makes anything that everything likes. I mean, you can
Yes.
make like a straight up very Christian, heavenly, a very flat out religious game, and they're going to be Christians who tear your work apart.
True.
It's like because yeah, so saved or unsaved, no, you're not going to not everyone's going to love your work. So, I mean, there's that, but I feel like, telling the truth, be fair, maybe have characters with saved and unsaved people and them treat them both fairly, their arguments fairly.
Hmm.
People look up to that.
True.
There's this, yeah, what's it called?
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, yeah, you know, so, be fair, be honest, and have you know, meaningful conversations, but, have maybe be the driving force behind people's lives is, the things that unite us all, uh, rescuing a princess or, um, building that little farm, collecting all the fruit,
Yeah,
those kinds of things all that we all enjoy doing, collecting, building, helping. All that stuff's very rewarding for everyone with every walk of life.
yeah, indeed. Uh,
Yeah.
one thing that I've been doing lately, and I that's a little bit of a counter nature between me and Lisa, is that sometimes I give warnings here to the people who are listening. She's the one who has the patience, has the love, and brings a great perspective. Uh, but sometimes I bring warnings here, and I came to warn to everyone who feels like they really want to attend the calling of God. Um, I direct you to the passage of First Chronicles chapter 28. Could you help me reading verses 11 to 19?
11 to 19.
Yeah.
11 to 19.
First Chronicles chapter 28, 11 through 19.
Right. I apologize. I realize I have a New King James and not King James.
No problem.
Okay. 11 through 19. Then David gave to Solomon his son, the pattern of the porch, and of the houses thereof, and of the treasures thereof, and of the upper chambers thereof, and of the inner parlors thereof, and of the palace of the mercy seat, and the pattern of all that he had by the Spirit, of the courts of the house of the Lord, and of all the chambers round about, of the treasures of the house of God, and of the treasuries of the dedicated things. Did it stop at 12?
Uh, 11 through 19.
19.
Mhm.
Also for the courses of the priests and the Levites, and for all the work of the service of the house of the Lord, and for all the vessels of service in the house of the Lord. He gave a gold by weight for things of gold, for all instruments of all manner of service, silver also for all instruments of silver by weight, for all instruments of every kind of service, even the weight for the candlesticks of gold, and for their lamps of gold, by weight for every candlestick, and for the lamps thereof, and for the candlesticks of silver by weight, both for the candlestick, and also for the lamps thereof, according to the use of every candlestick. And by weight he gave gold for the tables of showbread, for every table, and likewise silver for the tables of silver. Also pure gold for the flush hooks, and the bowls, and the cups, and for golden basons he gave gold by weight for every basin, and likewise silver by weight for every basin of silver, and for the altar of incense refined gold by weight, and gold for the pattern of the chariot of the cherubims that spread out their wings and cover the ark of the covenant of the Lord. All this, said David, the Lord made me understand in writing by his hand upon me, even all the works of this pattern.
Okay. First of all, sorry for having you read all of this. I know it's a passage that is a little bit like dry because it's very technical. But what I wanted to show is if you propose your heart to do something to God, know that God is very specific because he knows everything. So, to a
Right.
being that knows everything, if you ask exactly what he wants to do, he might show you. And if you propose yourself to it, expect that kind of thing. Very specific
Mhm.
things. And it's very interesting that all of the 19 says, all this say, David, the Lord made me understand in writing. God read it down for David to execute. It was so specific. He gave the amount of gold by weight, the amount of silver by weight, what it was actually used for, the candlesticks, all those details. And if you read the entirety of the construction of the temple, there are so many details there. Like I'm not going to say crazy, but they are so specific that I warn each and every one of you, if you propose yourself to make the work of God, know that God is very specific. And if you attend that calling, be prepared to be specific, be prepared to perfection, be prepared to really work those things, right? So
Right,
have that in mind. And sometimes understand that it can be counterproductive to creativity, because it will not come out of your creation, but you will be, if you pray to be used as a vessel to bring glory to God, sometimes you'll have to get things by writing from God.
yeah,
And most of the time God lets us free and walks with us towards the creation of things that brings him glory. This is just a warning, but do not be scared. Walk with God, and it shall 100% work.
right. I love another this is a wonderful example. There's this passage, I think it's Proverbs again. So a lot amazingly, there's a lot of good advice in Proverbs.
Yeah.
It's called "Man makes his plans, but the Lord directs his steps." This is a great example. David wanted to make a house for the Lord, and
Mm-hmm.
God gave in massive detail how it was to be built, and it was beautiful, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I something else I kind of realized as we were talking about this,
Right.
um, with Scott Cawthon, that a big part of what was the secret of what happened that brought, that lifting, like his games, Five Nights at the Creation, Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's lifting the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
It was that small crowd, and even the critics in it, even the bad experiences, listening to them and hearing what everyone was saying, like the stuff that's mean, the stuff that's flattering. It's like it helps you being moved and inspired by by the audience, making them a kind of he sort of made the audience, well, especially when he started really taking off, the
Mm-hmm.
audience became a big part of Five Nights at Freddy's itself. The theorists and everyone after that, but it all started with uh entertainer personalities in the indie game sphere
Mm-hmm.
criticizing his art and stuff like that. I mean, he wasn't trying to make that. I don't know if he's trying to make the game to please the audience or it was just a place. It was just something he made as art as therapy, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of working through the frustration of everything he went through. But even positive and negative, the people who play your games play a massive part in your development. And you'll be care I mean, you always, be careful in who you take to heart, you know, but even the small audi even the s oh gosh, again, I'm not focusing on opening the eye, making art for those who don't have a heart for God yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is again talking about development and general development and audience growth.
Right.
I'm sorry, but
No, no
I
problem.
was kind of thinking about how it was interesting.
It is. It is
I can
totally.
see why there's squirrels everywhere, aren't there?
Yeah. But that's a very appreciated perspective, of course. We can't forget there, for us Christians, there are two sides, and we can't just, although we might focus sometimes on one of them, we can't like isolate and pretend the other one doesn't exist. So I totally invite you to talk about whatever side of the public or um the audience of a creative production is for. There are no wrongs here. But to your point, I I found the Bible verse that you're referencing. It's in Proverbs chapter 16. Verse 9 says, "A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps." So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great advice.
because I think it's good, man my mind divides his way, but the Lord directs his steps. That's what you wanna do with your life and with your art, and it's more I think, like, that's going to bear fruit. Um, I don't know how like, that the game you make from that fellowship, for
Mhm.
that walking, it develops a relationship, it teaches, discernment. Even if it doesn't get you a big audience, it's a huge part of your growth, and, cherish those games. The games that even if they don't make a lot of money, they don't put you in the limelight or things like that, it's like but cherish them, keep walking, keep listening and let him direct your steps.
Mhm.
That's gonna be a life wherever God leads you, it's going to be a life worth living, whatever happens, whatever takes off or whatever doesn't.
Yeah, because he has like the best interest in us, thoughts of love, of peace, of you know
Yeah.
progression and growth, and you can't beat that. So yeah, okay, I gave my warning. Melissa brought a great advice. I really recommend. I didn't add Proverbs chapter 16 into the list of references that we would talk here, but she provided some great reference, and I really suggest that if you are willing to have a homework, kind of read Proverbs chapter 16. It talks a lot about the creative life, not as a creative, but in life decisions, and it sounds crucial. If you also want, there's a passage in James that talks about this, but Proverbs is a little bit more instructional, and that's a really good text to add. But anyways, I guess we got our time. Do you want to say anything else?
Um, I love them. I love them. They're I pray that, you know, your life is that you go close to your Father,
Mhm.
and that you create with Him, for Him, and enjoy enjoy your life. It maybe might be general, but if you have fun and you really enjoy the work of your hands, if you really enjoy it, if it's fun for you, it's going to be fun for someone else,
Yes.
and it's worth it. It's like I remember one time we went to an indie game development conference in a library somewhere, and these two little girls, they were interested in video games, and we were there speaking about making games, my sister and I, and they were looking up at us, and they were so excited, they were shaking, and I was like, "That was amazing." So we hung out and talked games and encouraged them, and, you know, you're going to love making anyone happy,
Mhm.
you know? You're gonna be an inspiration to someone, letting people know you exist and making something for them, and be having you'll love those 2 people and those 4 people. It's like having a small crowd. Don't be afraid of the shame. There's nothing shameful about starting small and only reaching a couple of people. Cherish those people. It's go you're going to love knowing that you entertain someone anyway. A small crowd is a beautiful thing, and just, minister to them, pray for them, say, "Thank you so much, my player. God bless you." I mean, it's wonderful.
Quality
And
over
you're going
numbers,
to
right?
what's that?
Quality over numbers.
Right, definitely. Quality is important if you're going to attract everyone, saved or unsaved. Put quality and with quality, oh, it's like you have Lord directs the steps. God knows quality. So like if you're walking with God, He's going to give you the best quality of life possible and the best quality game possible for where you are. And you know, oh gosh, I
But
had to find a passage. It's talk about the Lord gives you ideas for like witty inventions and things like that. God is very clever, and He
mhm,
can help you be clever and work with him, and making games and telling stories and things with God is a lot of fun. Y- And
yeah,
while you're and if you're having fun, other people will have fun, whether they're saved or not. It'll rub off on them.
yeah. But what I also mean is that sometimes having a small audience, you can dedicate yourself a bit more to them, and you can,
Yeah,
be there for some, and that's really hard to do if you have a big public. And everyone aims
yeah,
for big audiences, but sometimes it's very hard to engage with a lot of people, and sometimes
yeah,
getting less people will give you the chance to build, fundaments with few people, and that's that's a reason for you to cherish a small audience instead of feeling discouraged. It
yeah. It gives you more power to minister.
Yeah, in a more personal and intimate level that you wouldn't be able to do with a bigger audience. And some people would say, no, but with a big audience, I could reach out more people at once. Yeah, but how would you feel if God said this about you, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes reaching
It's like,
a few people might actually bring a bigger impact on your life and their lives,
it's true.
right?
It's like with in the world, it's about numbers and money.
Hmm.
For Christ, the God's kingdom, it's about impact. The day may come when you have those things, but it's more important to God that maybe when if God leads you to if you create the next Five Nights at Freddy's or, something like that. But, he had actually yeah, my goodness. At first, Scott Cawthon interacted with his fans directly, but then after a while, he had a circle of friends like Dawko, and so many other like streamers and entertainers had smaller audiences, and they sort of became like lieutenants, Scott Cawthon's lieutenants, and they would minister.
Right.
Yeah, it's all part of the development process. If you're small right now, you need to be minister yourself, and then you have your circle of friends and people and enthusiasts and those who really believe in what you're doing. Because a good story can hurt, it can heal a soul. I can't tell you how much just talking about the Lord 5 minutes of phrase. Amy and I would do that, driving around when we were during hospital visits and during COVID. It was incredibly it was a source of comfort and healing. And, that has that power. Art has that power. Games have that power. And then, like, the music with the harp, it heals. It can. There's just no 2 ways about it, so
It definitely
starting
can.
small, mystery, and offering healing to those and then, like, when they learn, it's like and then eventually maybe that then, your work and and your stories and your games will grow in audiences, but only as they're ready to be as the audiences are ready to be ministered to. This isn't the old system business. This is a kingdom of God business, and it's good to trust the growth process and to always make a game and get ready to love it. Anyone that you have the opportunity to show love for, pray for whoever you can.
Great. Yeah, totally. Um,
Yeah,
I, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a prayer now, and
absolutely.
in the future we can talk in the comments, or if somebody leaves a comment or whatever. We want to share experiences, but also hear experience from everyone, and hopefully we can build something really cool together. Um, so I'm going to pray now, and whoever is out there, hopefully this episode blessed or helped you figure out something. So let's pray. Dear Lord in heaven, we are here seeking for your glory and for a moment where we can reach out to you and in a more personal and dedicated level. And ask for your provisions, ask for inspiration, as creative people wanting to do things for the glory of your kingdom. Um, we ask that we might be able to draw the attention and the eyes of the lost, not to perpetuate their problems, but to present you in a way that brings light to their lives, in a way that brings glory to you and brings them closer to you. Um, whatever the way it is and however it presents itself, might us act as servants and understand our past and accept it and do the best with what you give and what you present us with. I thank you very much for everything that you've done for us. Might you bless everyone that is hearing this and the people, the creative people that we know, the creative people that we don't know, they're all there. Uh, might they all be blessed with inspiration that comes from you. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so um, I guess tune in for the next Bible bits. I'm sorry for the different time. If you feel like that's something that makes difference, it's actually my fault. I had a something that I had to attend to and I couldn't reschedule. But Melissa was very nice and understanding, and she still showed up and made her presence appear here, which is I thank you very much. Um, and yeah, do you do you want to say goodbye or anything?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you all for listening. Um, go out there and I pray that the Lord inspire you and know the joy of creating and growing, sharing your art with others, and just enjoy your life. God bless you guys.
Yeah, bless you.